Hello, pre-press professionals. We all know that Photoshop is good for editing. Its primary, most powerful tool is its ability to select. When we select in Photoshop, we can do so by area. I might be selecting squares, I might be selecting circles as I am doing here, or I can also be selecting through color range. I might use my eyedropper and issue the command select color range, and by clicking on various colors here and by adjusting this fuzziness factor, I can adjust how much that I want selected. Okay, here's an interesting question. Let's zoom out a little bit. You're going to see here on the bottom, what I have done is I've placed a gray bar from black to white, and then I've also taken a sample of this red color of this wire up here and use that as an example. Now here in this color range dialog, I'm going to just start selecting portions of this gray bar, and as I move across, you can see how that selection is moving. In fact, I can click and hold down the mouse and you see how it marches across. Interesting. Fuzziness is how strict I am or how loose I am. What I would like to do is to select as much of the neutral grays as possible without running into the problem of also selecting non-neutrals. How do you do that? Well, in order to get as much of the gray selected, I really have to bump up this fuzziness. Problem is, the more I do that, do you see what's happening right down here? I'm also more of the color. I want as much of the gray as possible, but I don't want any of the color. In fact, I would like to have so much fuzziness that whenever I select the gray, I want all the grays to be selected, but none of the non-grays. How do I select just the neutral colors? That's the challenge. Well, honestly, I don't think Photoshop has a built-in command to do that. Now, it's very good, very powerful at selecting colors. And I can choose a color that is gray, and I get just that region. But when I want to really bump up the fuzziness, the further I go, I'm starting to include here non-grays. So I've invented a method of selecting the neutrals. I feel a little bit like this is a solution in search of a problem, so to speak. But at the end, I'll show you some possibilities. And of course, you'll roll your own solution here. All right, I'm going to go through this step by step. And at first glance, it's going to appear to be many steps. But the more you do them, you'll start to be able to remember them so much easier. Okay, first things first. What I want to do here is work with a little bit more freedom in my windows. And what I'm going to do, very first step, is to do an image duplicate. When you do an image duplicate, you end up with two images that are exactly the same. I'm going to take this copy and I'm going to change its color mode from its RGB that it started as. I'm going to change it to lab color. I want to view channels. I want to view layers. Keep your eye here on the channels. When this window is active, I have LAB channels. When this window is active, I have RGB. Remember, RGB, that's what the camera caught. LAB is converted to device-independent color. And I have a lightness channel, I have an A channel, and a B channel. A is anything that ranges from red to green. B are those colors that range from yellow to blue. All right, watch how I do this. I'm going to start with the A channel. I'm going to bring up my select color range. I also want to bring up my colors. No, rather my info. As I move around here, notice this black, 47, 48. As I move around, here is a very light spot. Black goes down to 34. Here's a darker area. Oh, L is up to 50. I'm going to keep moving around sort of in an exploration until I find a spot where K is equal to 50. And then I'm going to click, and that makes this selection. Here's an important thing. This fuzziness factor in this exercise, we're going to start with fuzziness being very low. And I want you to interpret this as, how strict am I in choosing just the neutral grays? Am I very, very strict? I want a low fuzziness. Or I'm going to kind of open that up and go ahead and include some colors that are very low in saturation but are not perfectly gray. Let's start with a low number at 9. When you do this, you'll experiment, and you may bump this up to perhaps 15, perhaps 20. I'm going to start with this, click on OK. And now I have my selection, the famous marching ants. Over here in channels, this icon here means save this as an alpha channel as a permanent selection. Control D gets rid of the marching ants, but I have my selection saved, and I'm going to double click on that. I'm just going to call that A50. All right, now let's select the B channel. Remember, this one is the yellow to blue channel. And Photoshop remembers the K50. I don't have to do that part again, but I'm going to go select color range. All right, and you just simply click on OK. I have the famous marching ants. I'm going to save that selection, double click on it. I'm going to call that B50. All right, Control D to get rid of my marching ants and go back to the lab. So I have my 3 channels that I started with, the L channel, the A, and the B, and I have the 2 alpha channels that I saved. Here comes the trick. I'm going to hold down the Control key, and I'm going to click once here on the A50. This symbol that you see means turn that into a selection. I'm going to let go of the Control key now. I'm going to hold down Control, Shift, and Alt. This means intersection, and I'm going to click on the B50. What that means is only those pixels that are in both will be selected. I'm now going to save a new channel, double click on this, and I'm going to call this the neutrals. Okay. All right, Control D. Watch what I do. Here comes a neat trick. I'm going to take these neutrals and I'm going to drag it on top of the original starting image that I had and let go. And notice that this shows me this, which is a little disconcerting, but I'm going to click on that RGB to get back to my original image. That's called a color composite. I do not need this copy anymore. In fact, I'm going to close it. I don't need to save it. It's done its work for me. All right, I'm back to the original. What do I have? I have the color composite. I have the red channel, the green channel, the blue channel. That's the original data that the camera caught. And then I have this new channel that I've made through the help of using a lab converted image. I want to throw out just a little bit of a Gaussian blur. So I'm going to call filter, blur, Gaussian. And this number here, the amount of the blur here, is going to be sort of determined through experimentation. And I found that I'm pretty happy with a 1.5 to 2, somewhere around there. I'm going to click on OK. Okay, and I'll go back to my RGB. All right, we're about ready to wrap this thing up. Have we now solved the problem of I want to select everything that is gray, light gray, medium gray, dark gray, without selecting any of the color? Hold down the Control key, click on neutrals. Look what I've got. I've got that entire gray bar on the bottom. Dark grays, medium grays, light grays. I've got all of that selected, and I have none of the color selected. This is the point where you could sort of reach into this video and say, what value possibly could this have? Why would I want to do this? If you ever want to issue a command and have it affect only the neutrals or only the non-neutrals, this is the way to do it. Example, I would like everything in this image that is neutral to be, a little bit lighter. I've made an adjustment curve. And important, that adjustment curve has only affected the neutrals, the grays, regardless of whether they're dark, medium, or light, and has not affected anything that has a color associated with it. Let's turn this eyeball on and off, and I'll let you look at that as I do it. I'm only changing the neutrals. Anything that has a color associated with it is not changing. It's up to you to use this technique that I've shown you and for you to come up with your own solutions. And this will be possible when you learn how to select just the neutrals that are in your image.